Alright, so we are here with the beautiful Julia Roy. As if I need to say that. Look at her. And we're at the Influencers Conference 2010. We just finished watching probably the most anticipated panel at the conference.
Really?
Yeah, tech. What? This panel had superstars of tech on it, and we're looking at one right now. And please introduce yourself and tell us what you do and why you are such an influencer.
My name is Julia Roy, juliaroy.com, and all of those, that's my name across all platforms. But I started essentially as a vlogger and a micro blogger, someone that just shared their life with people online. And I started on Twitter when I was, when Twitter had just kind of come around. And so at that point the community was so small, like we would all connect and go to events together. I knew a lot of the people that we'd follow, and then I started getting more and more and more, and then started following back and interacting, and so it grew organically. I can't really say that there's a science or something that really made it. I guess the science is the video series that I did, and kind of creating multimedia is important. Take a photo every day, and then post a video, and people feel like they're connected to you. And so, from there, I started working in agency and working with big brands. Went to Coach. I'm running social media at Coach. And now I'm at a company called Manila, which is a startup, which I can't really talk about yet. You can see a little bit online about what Manila is, but, we'll kind of, come out and talk about exactly what we're doing. But right now we're in the building process of coming up with private beta, and then in January our consumer launch. So it's exciting.
In January. So what is it like then? Because for you, you are just, I don't want to say old school, but you're old school. You were there before Twitter, and you were doing this. So the evolution of social media, are you encouraged by it? Because, it's hard to even be heard on Twitter anymore.
To keep up, yeah. Well, it's, you have to kind of take it for what it is. It's like having a real large social network of people where you say, I have all these friends. You're like, wait, well, in reality, me and Jessica, like, if I was stranded, in the middle of nowhere, Jessica would not come and get me. But Jennifer, like, she's like such a good friend. And it's the same thing with online. You have kind of the periphery of friends and followers that you interact with, but you're not like, you're not so connected to, but you're still interested in. But the cool thing about social is that you get to interact with so many different people that otherwise you would never get to experience. And so I think that it's interesting, and so you kind of have to take it for what it is. I have 50,000 followers, so marketers, whatever, like, talk about my product, talk about it. I'm like, how many people am I really going to drive to your site? No.
But you're very practical in how you think about it. Brands aren't necessarily
because I see it.
Right. So how do you deal with that? How do you tell them?
Well, and again, it's the same thing I kind of talked about. Like, being in the New York Times is great, but it's not necessarily your business. And so if what you're telling me I think is awesome, and I feel connected to what you're doing, and you've approached me in the right way, like, I'm willing, or at least open to talking about you guys in a certain context that makes sense. But you have to adjust expectations of what that's going to mean for the brand. I'm not going to make or break your business.
That's a great point. There's a lot. So in other words, sometimes do you think that there's too much expectation on influencers like you to do?
Well, it's good to say, like, just because you're in the New York Times doesn't mean that your product now is going to sell. Like we were talking about before, like Kanye wears a watch and it sells like crazy, and that makes sense to me. But just because they talk about the watch in the New York Times fashion section doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a huge spike in sales. But it's about awareness. It's about garnering, getting people that have influence to talk about you mean something. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to your business is that your business is contingent upon influencers.
So then in social media, especially from your perspective in social media, which rules? Is it perception or reality?
It's both.
That's a great answer.
Well, it's hard because I think the same thing. I go to someone's profile, I'm like, oh, they have 50 followers. Either they're just starting out, or I'm not sure. You look at someone, you're like, wow, they've got 20,000 followers. Like, they're legit.
And we all do it.
They could be complete spammers. They could have gotten through spending hours on like services that follow spammers, and spammers follow them back. Who knows? And what even means that when they say something, even a percentage of those people actually care or take action. And so it's both. I think that same thing with as a celebrity or whatever.
So what do you do? All right, let's get to the celebrities because so you and I started on Twitter around the same time. So it wasn't the celebrities; it was the geeks. It was we were just like a little crew. Yeah. And all of a sudden, here comes Ashton Kutcher. Yeah.
Well, those people aren't real. Like some people are like, oh, on Oprah, I just heard about Twitter. Great, sign up, follow Oprah.
Right.
And then they're gone. So they have a follower that doesn't really exist.
Right.
It's like email. It's like email marketing to 50% of people that actually that's not their email.
Right.
They're not seeing it.
Right.
And so a lot of it is perception, but at that same time, it creates kind of if you've gotten someone to buy in and say follow, or take the time to say follow. Even if they're not there anymore, there's that kind of permission marketing where like so many people have opted in that you're like, wow, they must be legit.
Right.
If 10,000 people click that button,
it's got to be legit.
Why shouldn't I?
Right.
Unless I just find them completely annoying or whatever. But
so then, do you agree? Ashton Kutcher made. I hate to bring him up twice in the same. Nothing wrong with him. I'm just saying. He made a statement about a week ago about influencers online and Twitter. He said he believes Twitter could end like starvation, something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing, but he thinks that the power of influencers online and social media is such that you guys could like change the world and end hunger. And I think it's that serious.
Gladwell talked about this in a recent New Yorker post about how it's not going to change the world. But it starts movements. I mean, it's important to but it really requires people to take real action, not just tell someone that they should do.
Not just retweet.
It's to a certain extent, donating $10 to your favorite charity isn't going to change the world. It requires you to give up your summer and go to that place and really make a difference. It does matter in the spectrum of if I'm willing to talk about it in my network and then they talk about it, and it permeates. The thing that I like to talk about a lot is that Twitter, you can't be ignorant anymore. Like things happen and you can't and real even when people send me a message and say it's broken English and I can't really understand and they link to something that matters to them, I'm like, wow, there's so much out there that I don't, because I live in this little New York City bubble, and so many people are trying to communicate with me, and I can hardly understand what they're trying to get across. And there's so much out there, and you can't, like the Iranian, all of that really makes you so aware. You can't ignore it anymore. Because you cannot read the New York Times. You're like, I like the politics section, whatever. But when something happens and everyone's talking about it,
and it's trending, or it's this.
Right.
I'm going to throw a question to my fabulous intern Jeremy, who's also my camera person.
What can I say? So you've been talking about kind of the dangers of perhaps one person having too many followers that could be artificial. It doesn't sound to me like corporate followers, for example, corporate branding necessarily has that problem. So from that perspective, I was wondering if you could talk about perhaps some of the differences or the pitfalls between personal branding and corporate branding along these channels.
It's hard to be real when you're corporate because the person that's typically running the corporate Twitter or corporate Facebook page is like, quotes. I put it in quotes because it's not corporate. It's the person who's sitting at the table, which is typically an intern or someone of a lower level of stature in the company, because the VP can't be bothered with having to sit on Twitter all day for a good reason, because it's really time consuming. To build and make people feel, and and we've had policies. The companies I work for, if someone says something on our Facebook page or adds us on Twitter, we need to respond within an hour.
Right. Wow.
So they're always on it. So if someone says my bag just broke and I just spent $700 on this bag and I'm so upset about it, then we need to be like, all right, so this is Julian at customer service, here's their direct line, that type of thing. And so I think the hardest thing is with a personal brand, you can just be yourself. And if people like you, people like you. If people connect with you, if you have that type of personality that attracts a certain type of group of people to really admire, or just feel connected with you, it's easy to do. But as a company, you need to say, how do we represent upper management, middle management, customer service and PR and marketing and merchandising and like all the different aspects of your company, which are so desperately different, in a way that you really represent the brand holistically. And it's hard. And I've seen many brands do it just kind of, in a way where you're like, it doesn't sound like your voice, but they just want to do it. They want to get it out there. And the only way they know is to hire some intern to manage a Twitter account. And so, I mean, the difference is gaining followers as a corporation is way harder because you have to be both the brand and real at the same time, and that's usually one person. I mean, Ford's done a good job like integrating, like, here's our product person and here's the director of marketing and the people that make sense. They answer those questions relevant to who's asking and what they're asking. But it's hard, and I think the personal thing is way easier because you can spend the time you can spend the time and act silly enough to get enough people to follow you. But
you can tweet that you're wearing your pajamas, and no one cares.
Yeah, for the ladies that works.
That's awesome. You've been fantastic. You gave some great comments on the panel and stuff. Thank you for engaging us with that. I mean, you know you're busy, but what brought you to the conference? What did you think was so important that you needed to be here about this conference?
Through Osher and Phil, I just became connected. It was funny. Osher knows someone that I worked with at Coach right before I left, and she had, and then I met Osher, and she's wonderful. So I had no, I wasn't aware of Influencer10 before, but I'm always welcome to sign up.
Oh, great! We're always welcome to come back.
Join a good group of people and just have a great discussion.
Great! Thank you so much, Julia.
Thank you.
Thank you.